Today's guest is Sanket Mhatre. Now, Sanket Mhatre is known to many people. He is known because he's a very well-known voiceover artist. He has been the voice of so many Hollywood actors. You know, most of the Hollywood films are dubbed in Hindi. A few months back, I had interviewed Mona Shetty, who is another big voiceover artist in our country. And in that interview, all of us learned that most of the Hollywood films are dubbed in Hindi. Most of the English language projects are dubbed in Hindi, and then further into the regional languages. So who are these people who actually render their voice? Who are these people who are instrumental in bringing the character alive through our Hindi language, through other languages as well? You know, even South Indian films are dubbed in Hindi. And this guest, Sanket Mhatre, who I'll be interviewing, who will be there with us in this session, is not just a very powerful voiceover artist, but he has proved to be someone who wants to inculcate this art into the future generation, into the further artists to come up and rise. And that is one thing I love about him. That is one thing I want all of you to know about him. You know, he has been the voice of Deadpool in Hindi. That's so cool. I'm sure most of the people in my generation are excited for that. He has been the voice for Mahesh, Babu and other South Indian actors, further into Hindi, of course, and so many more projects. Radio, one big thing, you know, he has been instrumental in being a big part of radio. So here I am, I'll be adding Sanket Mhatre into the live session. So, hello, Sanket. He will be here any moment. Excited to join.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you see me?
No. सिर्फ आवाज आ रही है आपकी. Something is wrong with the connection? Oh, here he is. वाह वाह वाह. This was a nice thing. मेरी आवाज ही मेरी पहचान है, तो पहले सिर्फ आपकी आवाज सुनाई दी हमें और उसके बाद आप प्रकट हो गए.
How have you been, Rohan? All good with you?
All good with me. How about you?
I've been well. Thank you so much for having me over to talk about voicing. A pleasure as always to speak to you.
It's a pleasure over here as well, and being a voiceover artist, and a lot of things I want to learn from you, a lot of things that most of the young budding dubbing actors emulate from you, and I'm one of them, and I've seen your journey, I have heard a lot about it, and I know you as a person. You're a very good and kind friend, and not just an inspiration, but a very good friend, and what a pleasure to have you on board.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, so of course the session is about dubbing. I have introduced you as the voice of Deadpool or the South Indian actors. You have been a regular voice for Netflix and I'm sure other OTT platforms for Hollywood films, whatnot. But then this profession of dubbing, which not many people are aware of, you know, and many people are coming to terms, especially I've seen during the lockdown, many people are getting to know about what voicing is about. Many people have started getting a lot of interest in this topic, achanak se, because it's not anyone's fault. It's just that now that people can explore and they're having opportunities to explore, voicing has become a new hotcake in the entertainment industry, in the media industry. Yeah. So for Sanket Mhatre, what was the journey like? How did you venture into this beautiful profession of dubbing? What was it all about, your background and all of that?
Honestly speaking, I've been doing this for about 12 years almost. And when I started, this was quite one of those unconventional things. It's like saying in today's times, you know, I know of someone who's a gamer and does gaming professionally. And, you know, you'd laugh at it right now, but, you know, a year down the line, it'll become the new normal. That's how it was. You know, when anybody would say voicing, I would never think of it as a full-time career. And so I ventured into it quite by accident. I did engineering and then ran as far away from it as I could, as many engineers do. And I wanted to do something.
Do all engineers do that? Oh my God, there may be some engineers over here as well.
I know several who do, so I know the majority is the ones who are running away from it. But nothing against engineering, but I've always kind of, you know, valued the arts more. I've been doing theater for the longest time, and I wanted to do something in regards to that. So we started a small little band jamming studio where bands would come in and they would kind of make music, and we also had like a vocal booth where singers could sing and record, and we did small voice projects. There was this time when we had, I think it was NIIT, they wanted to do an animated project. Somehow the artist didn't turn up. They got really frustrated. It was a parrot's voice, and they asked me to try it out. I did, and then they asked me a couple of other characters, something, कैसे हो छुटकी पानी उबाल कर नहीं पीना, and there was like an old the sarpanch of the village. बच्चों ये सीख ले लो खांसी आए तो दवाई जरूर कराना, one of those kind of voices, and it was like a general awareness film, and so they really liked it. They passed on samples, and surprisingly enough, I started getting some calls. I got called by Ultra for their films, and it was very new to me. I sat down for the first time. They told me step by step, this is the line, just hear it once, see how he's saying it, then try to emulate it. Fortunately, in my case, I think the theater base helped out a lot because it came naturally. It took me all about 10 minutes to figure out the sync portion of it, which surprised me as well. Obviously, it took me years later on to master it, but that's the part where a lot of people get intimidated. So thankfully, it came easy to me, and that's how the journey started. Essentially, is quite by accident, and I count my blessings to be, to have crossed that project and, gotten entry into this phenomenal world of voicing, actually.
I can surely vouch for that because I have been dubbing since I was a kid, and I've been fortunate enough to meet people like you because they have started it with accident.
I mean, I don't know how many people speak of this, but Rohan's dad is an absolute legend as well, and one of my favorite voicing artists. He's such an amazing guy, Prasad Dada, and it's really, really nice and really sweet of you to kind of have me on and speak with you.
yeah, because I really, that's about me, that I feel very fortunate to have a dad like him, and then of course to venture into this beautiful profession, and as you said, the phenomenal profession like dubbing, which unfortunately many people are not aware of. But so basically it was स्टेज आर्टिस्ट तो इंजीनियर बन रहा हूँ और स्टेज पे काम कर रहा हूँ और वहां से that's how as you said accidentally
that's how I transitioned accidentally into
how fortunate people can be because of accidents. this is a very
it's probably a fortunate accident, I'd say. But what you do after that also is, I think, a huge chunk of where your success lies. I mean, you've been given an opportunity. How far you take it is how it changes your life. I think you kind of squander it. It would have been quite easy for me to just take it up as a fun thing, but I think something clicked when I did it for the first time. I really enjoyed the process. I enjoyed the output, and somewhere inside I felt I need to do this more and more because it was a beautiful creative expression, I think, for me, which I was looking for quite a long time, and much easier than theater, I'd say, in terms of not putting grueling hours of rehearsals and being able to immediately stand up and perform. That's a challenge of its own. I think there are certain things about it that I kind of got attracted to and stuck around. I mean,
so because you were stuck around, I think you found your passion over here. And because as you said that it's a little easier as compared to theater because of the long hours and everything, but I also believe that it is a way to unfold the God-gifted talent that you have, and to find that out even though it's by accident, it's such a beautiful thing to find it out that dude, I can do this. Engineering किया अच्छी बात है, but ये जो मेरा passion है वो मैंने ढूंढ लिया है. And then with that amount of perseverance and everything, then you move ahead.
Convincing people and telling them ki what do you do? I say I do voicing, and they're like, वो ठीक है, पैसे कमाने के लिए क्या करते हो? And then नहीं यही करता हूँ. Like, what are you saying? It's like a legit thing that you're doing. It's because they assume it's one of those things that you do on a weekend. Just like I gave an example of people gaming or whatever. But now it's a legit profession. I mean, being a social media influencer or vlogging, and all of these things are sources of income now. But people are still. So it was the same thing with voiceovers then. Thankfully, a whole social media revolution came about, and people started acquiring clips from YouTube, started researching on Google, finding out, what their favorite artists have voiced for, or what favorite characters of theirs was voiced by whom. And that's something that I think brought us a lot of recognition as voice artists in India, which is quite rare before that.
Definitely, and there is a lot of revolution which is happening. YouTubing and all these, all that paraphernalia. You can just go on and on and on. It has gained a lot of cult, actually, a lot of status today, and it is such a beautiful profession if you actually see, because in a way you are trying to radiate your talent, and the best thing is people are able to appreciate it. People are able to understand, because unlike the fact that जैसे पहले कहते थे कि हाँ भाई तो actual काम क्या करते हो?
Correct.
तो यही तो है, इसकी भी जरूरत है, that kind of thing. Beautiful, amazing. That's an amazing introduction. इसके बाद the question is, what all have you explored? I'm very, very, very curious to know this, because I have seen you as Deadpool. I have seen you maybe in a commercial, your voice I have heard. But then Sanket Mhatre, when he entered into this profession, तो आज तक क्या explore किया, क्या मिला है आपको करने के लिए?
Honestly speaking, a simple answer would be pretty much everything I could, because when I entered the field, I didn't have contacts. There was no godfather entity. There was no prior experience. It was a fresh new field for me, and I was trying to make my way into it, trying to learn the ropes. I did a lot of things in the initial 4-5 years. Those were, I think, my my strongest, hardest, important foundational years, I'd say, in voicing. I would end up going from studio to studio trying to figure out if there's work. I would live in a studio where I was voicing, and I would ask them to just let me stay there to watch the artists that came there. And at night, I would request the engineer to let me voice for the smaller parts. So I've done that for almost a couple of months, a year maybe. I used to do animation projects like that. I used to just stay in the studio the entire day, watch the artists that were coming, see how they were performing it. And at night, I would kind of ask the engineer to let me do small roles. And that's how I got a lot of practice. I did teleshopping networks, which everybody kind of makes fun of. But I wanted to learn, how to do that as well. So I got into that. I did quite a lot of that. I did crowds for films, which was another amazing experience. So a lot of films have a group of artists which create the ambience for the backgrounds in the film. Say there's a fight going on, or there's a vegetable market, there's a stadium. So there's a group of artists that are called crowd specialists, so to say, who come down and do that. So I've done voices for a lot of films like that. Prominently Wanted, Salman Khan's film, I'm somewhere in the crowds behind. I've voiced for that. Because there was a time where I had decided I want to do everything. I mean, there shouldn't come a point where you're on the microphone and somebody says, can you do this? And I say no. I didn't want that to happen. So I did pretty much everything. From crowds, I got, because of the performance, I started getting smaller character roles. Then I got bigger roles. Then somebody, Ellie offered me Green Lantern, Ryan Reynolds. So that was my first theatrical film. My animation work got appreciated. I got... there's a voice artist called Mosam. She told me about auditions happening for Ben 10. I went into audition for the villain for Ben 10, but they asked me to audition for Ben as well. And, I tried out for Ben, and, it got approved, and the rest is history. I mean, that's how it started. But like I said, the first 4-5 years, they've always been the toughest, where I decided to pretty much get into anything I could. So I have explored audiobooks, I have done TV commercials, I have done teleshopping commercials, I have done documentaries, AVs, films, television shows. I did radio for 6.5 years as a station voice for 92.7 Big FM. I've done radio dramas, and like I said, I mean, honestly speaking, all of it brought me a lot of joy. So I never stopped exploring anything. Even today, if there's something new, just like recently, I explored voicing for a game, for a mobile game. Collaborated with a mobile gaming company. I've done videos with them for that. So I mean, the world is limitless when it comes to voicing, because everything you hear around you when you step out of the house, or even inside your house, are all voices done by voiceover actors. Everything from an IVR which says thank you for calling ICICI Mobile, press 1 to continue.
Yes.
Voiceover artist, please wear your seatbelt on a flight is a voiceover artist. So we are all around you. I mean, there's so much to do, so much work. And I'm proud to say that, I was given opportunities and I tried to make the best of all of them. I mean, because I think you end up learning a little bit from everything that you explore, and then you can kind of bring it into what you really want to do, or what one of your niches is. For me, films or animation has always been something that I really, really adore, because it gives me the chance to explore the theater artist in me and the actor, and do a lot more with that, because there are not as many restrictions in terms of performance. It's not like you can perform everywhere. When I'm voicing for Bear Grylls, there's a lot of rules. I can't just be, a Deadpool. There's a way that he talks, and I need to kind of adhere to that. So like I said, I mean, honestly speaking, there are a lot of things, and I'm sure there must be other things that I haven't explored yet as well. But I did try to, get my hands on as many different things that I could in terms of voicing.
Wow, I know right now there are a lot of things going on in my mind, but then because you did mention about Bear Grylls, because even I had the privilege to dub a few characters in Bear Grylls, but I want you to imitate the voice which you usually dub for Bear Grylls. Just a line, ek pankti.
So I'll do his. So he does this, close camera and far away thing when somebody's kind of falling in the water, but he's also talking to the camera. So he goes. इस वक्त हम नदी के बहुत करीब आ चुके हैं. यहाँ पर मैं देख रहा हूँ जंगली हाथी हैं. डेविड उसके पास मत जाना. डेविड जरा संभल के. डेविड हाथियों के बहुत करीब है और ऐसा हो सकता है कि हाथी उन्हें देख ले. आराम से डेविड, आराम से, दूर रहना उनसे. और मुझे लगता है कि डेविड ये कर लेगा. आपको क्या लगता है?
मुझे लगता है कि और बोलना चाहिए. Amazing. I think you deserve a round of applause for this, because why? I'll tell you why. This voice, everyone has heard. Everyone has heard the voice of Ben 10. Everyone, and I think it's too sad that I wasn't a kid when Ben 10 got released.
Right.
I mean, I think I was grown up by then, and so I haven't actually heard your voice for Ben 10. So could you just give us a small glimpse of Ben 10 as well?
So Ben says something like, "Hi, मेरा नाम Ben है. Ben Tennyson. It's hero time." So that's a standard line, and that's how he speaks.
Oh my God.
And Ben 10 was like an important project also, because I ended up doing the 10 aliens that he transforms into. So I ended up doing 11 voices for Ben 10. So that was quite an achievement for me at the very beginning, and gave me a lot of confidence in terms of how I could approach the craft. Because till that point, I had not thought that I could do as many variety of voices, as many as I could in Ben 10. I mean, I attempted a lot of them, and I ended up doing about 11 voices for Ben 10. So that was quite phenomenal. I mean,
that's phenomenal.
So it had things like Humongosaur, which was Mera naam hai Humongosaur. And then there was a Spider Monkey. Then there was a Big Chill, which was something like Big Chill. So there was about 11 different voices, including Ben's, that I tried for that series, and which is why it was quite a phenomenal series in terms of how I began my, I think mainstream animation projects. So I quite like that series. That's always stayed on one of my favorite lists.
Definitely. And you know what? I think this is another opportunity you got to unfold the fact that you can actually imitate or give your voices in a different way to different characters, or you can just pull out different voices for different characters. So, I think
somewhere down the line, all of us have those voices. It's just we seldom get the opportunity to kind of experiment with them or explore them. And so I'm quite thankful to Ben 10 that way, because I wouldn't have, thought that I could do these voices. But because I ended up trying them and they started, coming out, and, I was like, oh, I was quite surprised myself, and we went with it. And so I'm really happy about Ben 10 as a project at the beginning of my career, where I understood that, okay, there are things you can try out. You don't need to be kind of, scared about them. Your voice will take you places if you let it. I mean,
True, true. This I experienced when I was dubbing for Sheikh Chili and Friends in
Right,
English, and there
right,
was this character called Bulbul. He was a donkey. He was one of the
right,
main characters, and that is the first
right,
time I actually was dubbing a mainstream animated character,
right,
actually, and I had to, kind of give a different voice texture for the
right,
donkey, and that's
right.
where I was like, "Oh, well, my God, Sheikh Chili!
Wow.
Come on, Sheikh Chili! I'm getting very scared." That kind of
Oh,
a
that
thing.
sounds amazing. It sounds almost like Orko from He-Man. That sounds really, really nice.
Oh yeah, maybe it's on a parallel. But
Yeah,
that is the first time I got this chance
right.
to bring about a different
Try out a
voice
different
from
voice.
me,
Right,
because otherwise
right.
my normal voice, which I dub in, is very different as compared to,
Correct,
and that's with every artist
correct.
which we
Absolutely.
see. Great, great, great. Another unfolding experience which we saw about you. Sanket, there is one thing which I really admire about you is the
Right.
fact that the command that you have over languages. Now, this thing actually, if you see, it has to be there if you call yourself a versatile actor, voice
Right,
actor, or a singer.
right.
Because if I say that I have a very good voice, I sing,
Mhm.
but if someone approaches that, we want to record a Malayalam song in your voice,
Correct.
then I can't be like, oh, lekin mujhe nahi aata Malayalam.
Mhm.
No,
Right,
that is
right,
where you need to take some training for that, but and explore
right,
that as well.
right.
तो
Absolutely.
कमांड ओवर लैंग्वेजेस, ये जो बात है, आप मतलब आपकी हिंदी है या
Right,
मराठी, यू आर अ महाराष्ट्रन obviously, or
right,
English and maybe some other languages that you know
right.
or you have dubbed in. So can you tell us about this command over languages?
I'd say that that's one of the first things you need to work on if you ever decide to be a voiceover artist. What happens is people don't visualize how it's going to practically be when you start working. What you end up thinking in your head is how you have to say something and get paid for it. However, what that entails is you will be given a script in your hand, which you should be, proficient enough to read at the speed of the person in front of you on the screen speaking a dialogue. So you need to kind of basically hear in one ear the English audio, maybe if you're dubbing for a Hindi film, in another your own voice. You're also hearing the director and engineer's notes in one ear. You have a script in front of you. You have a screen in front of you. The screen has an actor that's speaking a line. That line is in English. You have a screen, you have the line in Hindi written on a page. You have to read it similar to him. You have to pause where he pauses, give the same emotion. And this is even more complicated when you do it in person. I'm just describing the process. So if you're not able to speak it fluently, if you're not able to absorb the words immediately and understand the emotion behind it, then there is going to be a lag. And when that lag occurs, it's going to be translated into you not being a great artist. So if you need to, be better at the craft, this is the foundation. So I say that to a lot of people who ask me, how do I start? What is the, the basic things that I need to understand? The most fundamental thing you need to do is read aloud. We don't do that. We usually read in our heads. We don't read aloud. We don't record our voice and hear it. The one thing that I hear from a lot of artists who just start out is my voice sounds very different when I hear it recorded back. It's not how it sounds like now. And that's true. And you need to get used to that voice. And that recorded voice needs to sound better, not your regular voice that you use in your head or when you're speaking to somebody next to you. Like I might be speaking to you right now like this, which is very casual and all. But when I'm saying some dialogue for Netflix, it might be, रोहन मुझे तुमसे कुछ बात करनी है और ये बात बहुत जरूरी है इसीलिए मेरी बात को ध्यान से सुनना. It's a very different thing. I'm not saying Rohan मुझे तुमसे बात करनी है मेरी बात ध्यान. That's not how we speak. We speak with a lot of modulation, and it depends if the character that I'm doing has a lot of modulation or not. But anything at the end of the day needs you to have mastery over language. And that's something that I recommend everyone to do. So just read aloud. If you're aiming for Hindi, pick up Hindi newspapers, Hindi books. If you're aiming for English, pick up English newspapers, English textbooks, English storybooks, whatever it is. Get a good person, who can critique you to sit across and then read out to them. And do this in steps. I mean, maybe use the same, I generally suggest using the same passage also. Don't even have to change the text. Use like this one para and see the difference in you over a couple of days. Then start recording your voice. Then get hire a studio and record your voice professionally. Let them kind of, clean up your voice a little bit. Then hear it. You will yourself understand what your potential is. After that, judge what you need to do. Don't be that person that goes to a voiceover artist acquaintance and says, I'm interested. People say I have a great voice. I want to do voiceovers. Where can I come and audition? You can't come and audition. because you're not a voiceover artist yet. Because people who are voiceover artists have still been struggling for years to get to a place where they can, sound different, better, superior at their craft. So you can't just say, let me just do a weekend course, come in and, do a weekend course, do your practice, but, keep at it and don't expect the results to come in, a week, a month, 2 months. Like I just had a chat with Mona Shetty recently, and I think you had to, and where she says, I tell people at least give yourself a year to practice and become better in voiceovers, and then, try and explore your possibilities. I understand financially it's not always feasible for people, but the whole point is you can't bring money into the aspect of learning your craft. You can always bring it when you start working your craft, but when you're learning your craft, do 2 jobs, do 3 jobs, do what it takes to get the money in the house. But if you have the passion for it, forget everything else, forget the money part. That's the problem. When you start equating it with money, everything seems, not worth it. But if it's a passion project, you need to put everything you can into it. That's the only way you will get to, a better place in that craft. That's what I think.
As Osho says that the more you are ambitious about money, the less creative you are. That's what he says. And in our field, we cannot be less creative. We cannot sacrifice our creativity for this. And as you rightly said, that of course you have to see your financial situation. You have to, of course, you have a home and a family to run. But then you should not call yourself an artist or a creative person if the only objective is paise kamana hai.
Paise kamana hai. Right.
Yeah. So have that first thing in अपने ज़हन में that मुझे सीखना है और improvement करनी है. And as you rightly said, there has to be someone in front of me, a critic who is capable enough to actually tell me my flaws and कहाँ पे कुछ गड़बड़ हो रही है. And I have to be that open enough to openly accept it.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, thanks a lot for this suggestion. That is something really, informative and educating. Now this aspect is about Deadpool. You have been the voice for Deadpool, and honestly, I'm not very much aware of your work over there in that area. Yeah. So would you let me know how this journey has been? Let us all know actually that this journey of Deadpool, right from your voice test to your voice actually when you're dubbing over there and all of that for Deadpool.
So how Deadpool happened is a process that starts many years ago, because the first film that I was offered, like I said, theatrical, was Green Lantern, which was Ryan Reynolds. And because it was a Ryan Reynolds project, eventually the films that were made after Ryan Reynolds would always have me in consideration for the auditions at least. So that was my step in major films. That was the first theatrical that I did. And so what I ended up doing after that was a film called Crudes, which was an animated project, which was handled by Sound and Vision. And it had stalwarts like Rajesh Khattar, Prasad Barve, Guludi, Pooja Punjabi, and it was a phenomenal film. And I ended up doing that, and so that kind of strengthened somewhere that I can match his voice to a degree. Then Deadpool came. However, Deadpool was quite frowned upon when it came in, because it was an R-rated film, a superhero film that is R-rated. They had always kind of thought it would not work in India. It was a risk project, and rightfully so. I mean, an R-rated film, watching it in theaters, generally not what people go for. You probably watch it, on an OTT or when it comes on television with the censor cuts and all of that jazz. But you wouldn't go to a theater to watch an R-rated film. And so that's how it started. It started on a very negative note. I'd auditioned, it got approved, I think, basis that the voice was also a match, and because of the previous projects that I had done for him. Although that's never told to us on what basis the audition is selected, but that's how I assumed that's what happened. Then the writer was given a certain brief, and that's how the script came in. And Mayank was the writer, and he'd done a very good job. And when we started working, what was happening is we had to end up improvising, because a lot of the jokes were so Americanized that they wouldn't work. So, we ended up creating our own lines, and that's how he'd written it. He'd written it as treating it as any other film. You trying to adapt as much and keeping the original content. But this film was one where you couldn't keep the original content because that would not make you laugh. These are jokes.
Yeah.
I can't tell you an American joke in Hindi and expect you to laugh. I have to kind of convert it to, an Indianized version. And so, we literally ended up making, new jokes for every single line, and then the second part of the joke would come second half of the film, so we'd have to continue the joke. So it was literally like a film which had 3 tracks, because I would say a joke, then Kalpesh was the director and he would say a joke, or Paul was the engineer, he would say something, and we would all find it funny. So we'd record everything that we found funny, and it became like this huge reel of all our lines and all the dialogues. 2 versions, 3 versions, 4 versions for certain scenes. And then we showed it to, the guys from Fox, and they loved it, and they ended up choosing which bits were the funniest. And then, that kind of came to be. And honestly speaking, we had a ball of a time voicing for the film, but did not expect the kind of, the reactions that would come later. It became meme material, it became like a cult, and it took over in terms of business from a lot of Hindi films that had released around that time. And it's to this day, it's been years and years since the project. To this day, people, message me saying, I really loved you in Deadpool, I wish you were in the other one, and it was such a phenomenal film. I still watch it, and and I think doing that kind of a project is once in a lifetime deal, and I really enjoyed myself in the entire process. And thanks to the entire team who went by whatever. I remember this Wolverine line. I recently spoke to Mona also, and I remembered that line. He speaks about Wolverine and how he has claws in his hands, and he talks about how he kind of he scratches his bum with the claws or something like that, and we had to adapt it to Hindi. And I don't know if I'd read it somewhere or I just made it off. So we created this line which was वुल्वरीन को कोई नहीं डरा सकता किसी मंजर से, वो तो पिछवाड़ा भी खुजाता है खंजर से. And Kalpesh was rolling on the floor, and so those kind of things happened throughout the film, and I think it just came together in terms of as a full project. It was not just one scene that is funny. The entire film ended up with so many quips and funny liners. And it stands as a cult, one of those things that you'd want to kind of see again and again. I'm really proud of that project.
We all are proud of you, and as you said, it's not an easy job, because Indianizing the American joke is much of a task. And Deadpool, the वैसे भी it's
another thing that happened during that project was, and not a lot of people know this, but I generally don't cuss. I don't use slang words. गालियाँ नहीं देता हूँ, अच्छा बच्चा type का बच्चा हूँ, and it's so what happened during this, and people know this about me, people like the director Kalpesh knew this about me, and so he was ecstatic when he realized कि Deadpool में trailer में गाली देनी है. And I still remember the day when I had gone into audition because the trailer was supposed to be on YouTube, so it was not going to be censored. The film would be censored, so there was no scope of me giving gali in the film. Thank God. But the trailer, I had to give a gali and all that. So I remember that day when I had gone in for the audition, and there were a lot of people generally walking around, and I was a little surprised as to I didn't know what was happening. So I go in, I get on the mic, and I'm ready to record. And these 6-7 people have come inside, and I'm like, what is happening? All these directors, engineers, and Kalpesh is like, abhi wo gali dega, and they're all waiting to hear me say, an expletive, and because they've never heard me say anything like that, and they're all huddled there next to the room, and I'm just looking at them like, this is like the most conscious I've been in my life trying to do this, and that trailer is still there, and I remember that day. This is why I think
so then
really
the
amazing
first thing after this is I'm going and watching the trailer then.
Watch how uncomfortable I am as I say it.
I know. But that being said, it's a remarkable achievement actually.
Yeah.
And all of you actually, you, Vaibhav, all of you who have given your voice for the Avengers, movie.
Right.
I think it's a remarkable journey in general.
Absolutely. And Avengers just happened by chance. I think so the thing is, Avengers started with Thor, and I had voiced for a friend of Thor's. in when it started. Then they said, whoever's done minor characters will only end up doing minor characters. You can't repeat them for a major character. That's the rule they brought in much later. And then, these guys were stuck because they were like, if we had this rule before, we wouldn't have used better voices for smaller roles. I mean, we wanted them for bigger roles eventually. And so it happened that during the second last film of Avengers, my character has this one line where he says, because he gets stabbed with a knife and dies. And so it was the funniest thing. And Kalpesh said, that's the only thing that you're voicing for. Fortunately, there was a Matt Damon as a guest character in that film, so I came and did that. But in the last one, then they ended up taking a call saying they wanted to change the voice of Hawkeye because he goes into this Ronin mode where he's really intense and angry about the entire situation. And so they had a re-audition that they did for that one, and that's how I, ended up doing at least one Avengers with a main, superhero. Otherwise, I was just, Thor's friend, and I'd done like an Iron Man 3 villain. Guy is his name, I think. So that's the two characters that I'd done for the entire 23 films or whatever. And then in the end, last film, I ended up doing Hawkeye. So I was really happy about that to kind of get a foot in and, do this as a memorable project to stay away.
Cool. Amazing. So you had like two voices in that film then.
Right.
Let's just say the two characters were dubbed by Sanket Mhatre.
Yeah.
In that film. Wow. Great treat. Now, of course, there are other projects like South Indian films. How did this process, or Netflix, we'll just accumulate these two things that, South Indian films when they're dubbed in Hindi, or Netflix series, they may be English or any other language which are dubbed in Hindi. So how has this been in your profession so far? Like, how has this journey been?
So South to Hindi happened much earlier. South to Hindi happened about, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. Slowly, films were always dubbed from South to Hindi, but they hadn't reached, a certain popularity. Surprisingly enough, a couple of my major projects which I ended up doing with Sound and Vision ended up going really big, like DJ and Sarai Nodu. They ended up breaking YouTube records and stuff like that. And there came a time when phone internet became really cheap. So people could actually end up watching entire films on the phone internet without, it causing any sort of issues in terms of bandwidth or costs. And that changed the game because people were watching these films all the time. Like I'd end up traveling sometimes and somebody next to me would be sitting on a phone watching a movie that I had voiced for. And, I'd just sit to watch their reactions and all that. And it slowly became this cult industry of its own. And it took on another life. And this whole Allu Arjun phenomena came much later. But, up till that point, I had already voiced for a lot of South to Hindi actors. Honestly speaking, it's about 13-14 guys that I've voiced for in the South to Hindi genre. And I'm really glad that it kind of took off where it did because, some South Indian projects have really research stories and, really great twists. And when you remove the songs and make it, re-edit it into a crisper 1.5, or 1 hour, 20-minute project, it becomes a superb thing to watch. I mean, and that's, I think, what captured everybody's minds. Then Netflix came quite recently and I was quite lucky. One of their pilot projects was Narcos, which they attempted to dub in Hindi. And I auditioned for that and I ended up doing Murphy's bit for the first 2 seasons, which is one of the lead guys who catches him. I think honestly, it's one of voicing's finest work is how I term Narcos in terms of how the writing has come all the way from how it was many years ago, how the performances have I had Mona direct me, and I was quite lucky in that aspect. She was there for quite a few episodes. Kalpesh was there for quite a few episodes. If you watch Narcos, and I've recommended this to many people who hadn't seen the show, to try it in Hindi. And they ended up seeing the entire show in Hindi. So, I mean, that speaks to how far the voicing industry has come now. From where you once probably ridiculed it for the kind of Hindi that you're hearing and, to now, it being so natural that, it sounds quite all right. I mean, just the other day, there was a show that I had voiced for called Top Boy for Netflix. Somebody in the UK, it's a London-based show, and somebody in the UK watching it on Netflix, who's an African-American guy, he said, I just switched over to Hindi just for the heck of it. and I loved the performances, and I started just watching them in Hindi. And somebody else who I think was a fan, they tagged me on that saying, this is the guy who's voiced for it, and I said thank you so much. And so it's really great that your voices are now going international. So projects like Sacred Games for Netflix, for example, has been dubbed in English in India.
English.
And so if you hear it abroad, you'd know this. You've done for this, right? And so if you'd hear it abroad, the English that they're hearing is Indian artists. So, I mean, the industry has come along, and that's how it should be, because there are equally talented voice artists in India as there are abroad. It's just that there was lack of opportunity, not as much exposure to international media, which is happening now thanks to all these OTTs. So I'm glad this cultural shift is happening. I'm glad that this new technology is coming in. Now you get to work on projects simultaneously as they are happening internationally. You're not like a Ben 10, maybe I was doing it a year down the line, or there are projects that you're doing many years later after they've been originally done. Now we've come to a time where they are waiting for the like Avengers Endgame, simultaneous dub projects releasing all over the world on the same day. That's a phenomenal achievement, I think, and so that's where the industry has come now. It's at par with international standards.
Yes, we've come really far in that aspect, and we feel very proud for that. We feel, and as you rightly said, जब शुरुआत में आपने कहा था कि it's all around us. These voices, it's everywhere. And now that it's at par with the international standards, as you rightly said, oh come on, we are standing somewhere really well now.
Absolutely,
absolutely. Anyway, Sanket, in March, all of us experienced a very unexpected event, and that was COVID-19.
Right.
And most of the artists had gone haywire about this fact that abhi kya karna hai, abhi kya hone wala hai. Everyone, seldom did we think that everybody was like, ये तो ठीक है, 2 हफ्ते की बात है, उसके बाद everything is going to start. Never did we ever think the fact that it is going to go on and on and on and on.
Right.
To the point that we had to, install a setup back home. Everyone, all the voice artists erected a setup ghar pe. So, can you just guide, or can you just tell us what voiceover artists have done in the process that they have, come up with?
So the beautiful thing of the entire process was the work didn't stop. It started off and continued with artists who already had setups, and then went on to people who ended up adapting and buying equipment, making their own setups. And so, eventually everybody started working again from the process of their houses. A lot of artists ended up using their phones in the beginning, which ended up being a lot of burden on the engineers to kind of clean up audio and buff it up in terms of quality. But eventually, because equipment was not available and you couldn't even order things in the beginning, the first couple of months were very difficult.
Very difficult.
So that is why during those times most projects were handled by artists who already had the equipment. But eventually, when Amazon started it, and so people started erecting, I've been doing this for years actually. I used to make this pillow fort in my house sometimes, or I have a cabinet which is voice proof, so to say. And so depending on where or what room the noise is the least, I end up using the equipment. A lot of people got into this thing of I need an expensive microphone, but that's not the case. The most important thing that you need probably in this situation is better soundproofing ideas. People ended up voicing in their wardrobes under thick blankets, converting their cupboards and covering with sheets and stuff like that, and all of that worked really well. There were softwares that were explored, like Sound and Vision still does this, where you can just log on to the software online, and the engineer and the director log on as well, and you can see the video online and do it. You can dub online, so we ended up doing quite a lot of Netflix projects. I did a couple of films, I did a couple of shows, sitting at home with studio quality voice, connecting my microphone to my system, but the voice directly being transmitted over the internet to the director's console and stuff like that. So these are some amazing things that have accelerated technology acquisition in our industry, which would have probably taken years and years, and we would have never thought. The thing about this is also a very Indian thing, where if I am paying you money, I need you to come down in front of me and perform. वरना मेरे पैसे वसूल नहीं होंगे, so to say. So this, this has been happening abroad for decades, where people, voiceover artists do work from their home studios and send the output. But India has this thing of मेरे सामने नहीं कर रहा है तो मुझे नहीं पता चलेगा कि वो क्या कर रहा है, कैसे कर रहा है. This very thing of, obviously for bigger projects you have to be in the studio because it becomes really tricky. But stuff like, small one-liners, corrections, ads, maybe, really tiny documentaries and AVs and stuff like that, they can always be handled from home. And now everybody's begun to realize that, because people have done, Netflix projects, Discovery projects from home. And that is also because the kind of microphones you get now are superior in quality from the get-go. I mean, you just pick it up, you plug it in your USB, you start speaking into it with a pop filter. It sounds great. The engineer doesn't have to do anything, phenomenal to kind of, save the voice or whatever. The microphones are really great. And if you've invested smartly, you can just start off immediately as soon as you kind of install it in your computer. And that's what happened, I think. And I'm really glad. It's in a way, taking the industry to a point where the artist doesn't physically need to be there all the time. Eventually, I'm hoping this also starts this whole video direction thing where which happens abroad a lot, where you kind of have a screen where the director is also on video with you and he's telling you what to do or how to do it, besides the audio, and that also helps, I think, to a degree. So I'm really glad. A lot of people take it in the negative, but I think the lockdown was a phenomenal lesson. I mean, it made you kind of push your boundaries as a voice artist, which you wouldn't have done in comfortable situations. You had to learn how to perform in these situations to kind of keep your job. You know what I mean? To also, and it's a big break. If you don't work for 4-5 months, even if you're comfortable, it's a huge break to take from your craft and to not practice, what you're doing. That also affects it in the long run, I think. So I'm glad, everybody stepped up their game. A lot of studios gave support in terms of, tell us what you need, whatever technical help. A lot of people came online discussing it. I ended up starting a small series, trying to help out people who wanted to do voiceovers, know how to start from their houses and stuff like that. So a lot of people ended up helping and giving back to the community. And I think that's kind of helped a lot of people, come online and, keep the work going. And I think that's wonderful.
It's exactly, rightly said, because we have become very self-sufficient. We wouldn't have pushed ourselves had this not been occurred, actually. And because of which we have also gained this amazing expertise into technology, into editing, because the softwares that we use as dubbing artists, through them, we are able to edit, we are able to focus upon what to reduce, what to increase, the pitch, and all of those things.
Amplification, compression. Yeah, we wouldn't have done all these things because we always had an engineer who would handle this for us. We always had a director who would tell us do this, do that. But now when you're in the house, you're alone, you are doing your direction, you're doing your editing, you're doing your voicing, so I mean, it's taught us so much more about the craft.
It's kind of a sweet provocation, let's just say.
It is. And to some people, it is like a necessary provocation, because otherwise you can't survive. I mean, this has to be done to acquire work. Otherwise, they're not going to hire you. I mean,
true. It's the rightly they say the call of the what they call it of the year, or what you say is the call of time. I don't know what the term is. It's the need of the time.
Need of the hour.
Need of the hour. Yeah. That is what it is. And you did mention about a video that you have, kind of a series that you have started. So can you let us know what is that about?
Sure. So it was something I was planning for a couple of years, but I never could end up doing it in regards to, because of the kind of work we do and we have irregular hours on irregular days. It's a series called 3 Minutes to a Behatar Voice, which are just tiny 3-minute, roughly 3.5 minute videos, which I used to put out. They help you with, especially for anybody who's trying to break it into the, the voicing industry, as a singer, voice artist, maybe even, breaking it into theater, but wants help with their voice. So it's tricks and exercises and, things that I had tried out and learned after a couple of years, or I've heard it from, talented artists or directors, and they've been passed down. So I try and help out with exercises that you can do, things that you can eat or drink, what to do before a session, during a session, things that you can do to take care of your voice. So small tidbits like that. And that's just my way of kind of giving back to the people who've, been supporting and appreciating so much. And it's just a small gesture. I think I'm just going to keep adding to it slowly as I can. It's a good place for people to start who are not from Mumbai, who don't have access to as many, phenomenal coaches. I think if people don't know this, even Prasad Dada, I think, conducts classes. And, if you guys are interested, please get in touch with him, because he's one of those really, calm, composed guys who will teach you with, utmost patience. So, he's one of those people. So there's Darpan, there's Rajesh, there's Asif. There are a couple of, talented voiceover artists who have their own thing. But if you're not from Bombay, it becomes difficult. Now it's easier because it's digital. So, everybody's been kind of, doing it online. But even then, if you don't have the financial means for it, then I decided to kind of start this small thing, which people could access as a library of things which you could fall back on whenever you need any help. So that's how it started, basically.
It's a great initiative, and all of us look forward for that. And there's definitely something to learn and pick from that. I have seen a couple of them, and it is very informative. And I think, again, need of the hour, because, and that's exactly what brings me to my next question, my last question, actually. And that is that, what is that quality inside you that you admire about yourself, maybe as a professional, as a voiceover artist, as a human being, which you would like to spread, which you would like to, give to the upcoming artists, to the next generation?
So the one important thing that stayed with me, from the day one that I started this journey, was you can't ever stop learning, because that will be the end of my journey towards mastery of this craft. If there is always something new to learn, there is always somebody new to learn it from. You'd think that there are artists who are just a year old, they're pretty new, there's nothing to kind of what can I learn from them. But you'd be surprised at what every artist brings. And there are things like learning how to change your age for a voice, that I learned from Meghna. How to change animal sounds, that I learned from Raju Kawa. There are things like how to express really physically without moving your body an inch. I learned that from Shanur. From Viraj, I learned how to create this ambience where you stand in and be the character. So there are things that I've learned from observing these guys, and I try and bring a percent of that into what I do. And it's not stopped. I end up learning something new from everybody that I end up passing by, and any project that I end up going to. And that's, I think, what's kept me alive in this field. You probably just sit by next to somebody as an artist who's new, but the way they're marking their pauses is a technique that you think, oh, this is great, this will save me a lot of time, I need to pick this up. You ask them about it, you learn from them. There's no big or small, there's nothing like that. The whole goal is to be as better as you can at your craft. And I think that's the one thing that I kind of want to give away to everybody, is just don't stop learning. That's what it is.
That's a great advice. That is the truth, because the more and more you learn, because the learning process never stops.
Never stops.
We are going to learn, we are going to absorb and grasp so many things every day. And that is a sign where, in your introduction, I had written a very, a word that suits you, that is humility.
Right.
And that is very important, because it's your work. Right. It is somewhere where you grow, where you foster into. So you have to have this innate quality, where you need to grasp from someone else. You need to learn something. You need to learn something from yourself, maybe, which you haven't explored.
Right.
Yeah. That's a great advice. And that being said, thanks a lot, Sanket, for being my guest.
Thanks a lot for having me. And thank you so much, everyone who's joined in, who's been commenting, who's been liking the entire chat. Thank you, all of you. It's because of the support and appreciation that you guys give is why we do what we do and try to do it better every single day. So thank you so much, Rohan, for giving me this opportunity to speak to everyone.
Thanks a lot. The pleasure is all mine. So see you again very soon. And keep dubbing, keep voicing, and keep inspiring all of us.
You take care.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye, guys. See you all. Take care.